been in Colorado for about 40 plus years, so it's good to be back in Houston. I've not been here in about 40 years, so it's been quite a few years for me. So let me give you the context in which I'm going to give you my presentation. I'm from Chicago. I'm the youngest of 3 sons of Doris and Ivory. That's my biggest credential, okay? I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. I'm the past national president of the Association of Black Psychologists. I'm the founding member and the current president of the Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Black Psychologists. So I'm going to give you a psychosocial historical perspective on the glory of our people. So this is what they call National Black History Month, right? Yes. Now those of you who studied Dr. Carter G. Woodson knew that it was never meant to be a time that we celebrate black folk. You know that, right? It was never a time to celebrate all of the various heroes. It was not meant to be that. What Carter G. Woodson said himself when he started this National Black History Celebration, which was first a week, it was expanded to a month subsequently. But what he said is that National Black History Week was the time to study, I should say, to celebrate everything we have studied about black history all throughout the year. It was never meant to be just a time we bring out all these famous people who we appreciate and glorify. It was about celebrating what we have learned all throughout the year. The problem is that we don't study our history all throughout the year. That is a major issue. And this is not to knock sports or anything else that we entertain ourselves with. That has its place. But we need to spend as much time entertaining ourselves as we spend entertaining ourselves, if you get my drift. So what would happen in our community? We actually spend as much time studying our history, as many hours that we spend watching stuff that just makes us feel good, entertaining. What type of revolution would that be within our community? It would be awesome. But once again, we have to flip the script. We don't celebrate Black history just in January. We should do a 365, because we're Black 365, right? We're people of African descent every day of the year, not just during February. And the thing, and I only have about 20 minutes to speak, but I wanted to kind of lay this context for you. So when we think about National Black History Month, understand that it was one way that the destroyer attempted to co-opt our history again. They tell us that in some states you can't even teach Black history. What are they so afraid of? That we will learn about ourselves if we actually seriously studied who we are. What are they afraid of? And besides, we don't need permission to teach about ourselves, right? That's right. Nor should we have people who don't look like us and don't like us teaching us about us. So we have to really take this serious. It's not just something that we do in February. When you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you see who you are. And what you should also see is the fact that you are, that we are, our ancestors. Now, not to get too scientific, but the epigenetic studies tell us that the environment helps us be who we are today. What has happened to us through millennia, for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, is in our DNA. We are our ancestors. Our genetic material are that of our ancestors. Our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, our great-grandmothers, all the way back from the very first human being on the planet. And as the last poet said, in that poem that Brother Tamani read, we taught the world how to pray and think. So all of the achievements, everything that our ancestors are, we are. And when we have people tell us what we can and cannot do, all we need to do is remember where we came from and who we are. It's in our genes. And we can talk about the fact that the trauma is in our genes of these last 500 or plus years. The trauma is in our genes. The trauma is not who we are. The trauma is what happened to us. But guess what? The good news is that the resilience, the power of our ancestors is also in us. Everything that they achieved is in us. And to quote Marcus Garvey, what Africans have done, Africans can do. And I'll say it again, what Africans have done, Africans can do. So when people tell us what we can't do, it's like, look, we've done it all. We created philosophy, we created mathematics, we created history, we created astronomy, we created civil engineering and architecture and medicine and law for thousands of years. Not just this American nightmare that we've been caught up in these 500 years. For thousands of years, we laid the foundation for all of the current sciences. We had the oldest civilizations on the planet that lasted thousands of years. We talk about Kemet, or the Greeks called it Egypt. The real name is Kemet. These were black folks. Some people take Egypt off the continent of Africa and put it up in the Middle East. Middle East of what? What is the frame of reference? What is their point geographically that it's the Middle East? It's east of what? It's east of Europe. Right? That's their frame of reference. They're using a Eurocentric frame of reference to destroy, I should say, to describe an African nation. Egypt is Northeast Africa. The people who built that civilization, who built the pyramids, who laid all of the foundations for what we call Western civilization, came from us. The Greeks, and this is well documented, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time giving you books and authors and all that stuff, but I gave Brother Tamani a bibliography. If you're interested, it has some wonderful resources for those who really want to get into studying our history seriously. So there's YouTube links. So for those of us who don't want to pick up a book, check out the YouTube videos. But these are our scholars. These are people who spent their lifetime studying us, our scholars. You need to know who they are. Because if we really want to understand the glory of our people, we won't learn this during February. It's something that we have to be serious about, just like we study in our schools. We need to study ourselves even more seriously. So we take time throughout the year to actually do that. So when we think about navigation, sailing across the planet, I hear some black folks that say, you know, I ain't African. I'm American. I'm an Indian. Well, you know, let me give you just a little bit of history here, that if you understand the history, that destroys the mystery. That's what Brother James Small says, okay? When you understand that we are the people, we are the Homo sapiens sapiens, the walking, thinking, living beings that originated at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro in what they call the Rift Valley, the source of the Nile. We are the first human beings. There were 5 different types of humanoids that lived on the planet. The ones that live today are known as Homo sapiens sapiens, walking, thinking human beings. We're the ones who left Africa and migrated all over the planet. Every place white folks have been, we were there first. The people who we call Asians or other people around the planet, we occupy those places first. You can go to Alaska or the Arctic. You find people who are black. They may have straight hair because of the environment, but they're black folk. We have been everywhere first. And yet, we have people who don't like us, who don't look like us, teaching us about ourselves. How foolish is that? Whose responsibility is it to teach us about ourselves? Whose? If we don't, who should? No one. That's our responsibility. So we can get upset about it in some states, like Texas and Florida, where they made teaching black history illegal. What we teach in our homes, nobody has control over. What we teach in our faith-based communities, no one has any control over. So for folks to tell us what we can and cannot do is just stupid. If we buy the lie, if we drink the Kool-Aid, if we get caught up in their matrix, that's exactly what happens to us. So we just have to be wiser. And we have to, once again, realize that when people try to tell us who and what we are, we have to be very cognizant about why they're doing that. It's all about control. And I can tell you from a psychological vantage point, if you control the mind, you control their reality. Dr. Wade Nobles, who's a black psychologist out of Oakland, California, who now lives in Houston. He's one of our past national presidents of the Association of Black Psychologists. He came up with a definition about power many years ago. Dr. Nobles said that power is the ability to influence other people to accept your definition of reality as their own. So when we find people who don't look like us, I call them the destroyers, because that's what they do. Every place they go, they just simply destroy. They never bring civilization. What they bring is culture. They bring their culture. Because by definition, civilization means the process of living civilly. If you're making war on people, is that living civilly? There's a clip. I mentioned this to Sister Amanda earlier. There's a clip on YouTube. I would encourage all of you to take a look. Take a look at this little clip. It's about 4 minutes long. It's called Dinner in America. And Joe Morton, who some of you might know from Scandal, you know, that TV series that came on some years ago with Kerry Washington called Scandal. That's Joe Morton. That's Kerry Washington's dad in this series. So anyway, in this clip called Dinner in America on YouTube, it talks about what we have been dealing with as a people, in part. Because once again, wherever the destroyer went, they did not bring civilization, they brought their culture. Okay? So the clip talks about the fact that the destroyer is really a virus. Every place they go, they infect and they destroy, just like a virus would in your body. I don't care if it's COVID-19, HIV, the flu, or whatever it is. The virus enters your body to take over, to use the resources of your cells for its own purpose. It just reproduces. And if left to its own devices, it would just simply destroy the organism that it infects. So when we think about how the destroyer had left the caves, built boats, running across the planet, colonizing, it was all about using people for their own purpose. And too often times, we find ourselves kind of caught up into that because we drink the Kool-Aid. We buy the lie about who we are from people who don't like us and don't know us. So we have to be very mindful about this. So when we think about how powerful we are, we cannot understand who we are looking through the lenses of somebody else. We have to look through our own cultural lens. So, how many of you are right-handed? If you're right-handed, raise your right hand as high as you can. If you're left-handed, raise your left hand. Okay, now everyone raise the hand that you write with, whatever that is. Look at your hand. Look at it. Look at your hand closely. Turn around and look at your hand. I'm asking you to do something. What's in your hand? You're wrong. Power is in your hand. Power is in your hand. See, white folks want us to think that we have no power. We have the power. It's been in us all along. Nobody needed to give it to us. We were born with it. It is in us. It is innately within us. We are not a helpless people. We are not a hopeless people. We have to understand who we are. And the fact that we're confused about who we are, we think we have no power. And that's exactly what the destroyer wants us to believe about ourselves. Understand, the fact that we're having this discussion on February 8th, 2025, really speaks to our resilience and our power. The destroyer never intended for us to be in a room talking about our history and our culture and how strong we are and our talents and our skills and the things that we have created for millennia, for thousands of years. They had no intention of us for being anything other than enslaved physically and mentally. Because as a people, we have a legacy. Understand, if you don't remember anything else that I say today, understand we have a legacy of beating the odds against the odds when we have the will to do so. And that's only when we have the will to do so. If we drink the Kool-Aid and buy the lie that we are just simply descendants of slaves, we miss the millions of years that we had existed before the slavery. Millions. And the side note is that there was some discussion among the European anthropologists some years ago that human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, only came into existence maybe about 500,000 years ago. Then you found some other old bones in Africa. It was about 1 million years old. So they had to revise what they thought about when Homo sapiens sapiens began to exist. Then they found some other bones, about 2 million years old. They had to rethink again. The fact of the matter is that we are the oldest people on the planet. All of the other people came from us. They came from us. They are our children.
That's right.
But we get all twisted around. We worship their culture, we worship their values, and we get caught in their matrix, in their madness. So we just have to be very, very careful about that. So, there's a quote I would like to share with you from Dr. Amos Wilson. Some of you might know who he is, but he was also a psychologist. You know, when we think about the game that's been played on black folk, it's been a mental game. And who better than psychologists can help us deconstruct the mental game? So Dr. Amos Wilson made this quote some years ago. He says that to manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. To manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. So we have to be very conscious. And once again, I would just encourage us as deeply as we can. Understand our history, and you will have no mystery about who you are. And you will understand the limitations that have been placed upon our minds. It serves somebody else's purpose, not ours. Steve Biko, and some of you who might know who Stephen Biko was. Stephen Biko out of South Africa. He was made an ancestor many years ago during the years of apartheid in South Africa. Stephen Biko said that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. Once again, what has happened with us has been a mind game. We don't understand it because everything deals with that. And when we think about our mentality, how we think, it also has a lot to do with what we think about ourselves and what limits we place on ourselves. There was a song that came out in 1970. I'm telling my age now. I don't mind telling you I'm 72. I'll be 73 in August.
Looking good there.
Okay. Black don't crack when you take care of it, but you got to take care of it, or you get all cracked up. No pun intended. Okay. There was a song that came out in 1970 by the Funkadelic. In Vogue made a rendition of it some years ago. But the name of the song is Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow. That is the original song in 1970. Those of you my age and a little bit younger might remember that song. If you ever get a chance to listen to it on YouTube, because you can find almost anything on YouTube. There's a lot of crap, but there's also a lot of good stuff too. We need to remember, we need to free our minds. And the only way we can do that is by studying ourselves. It doesn't mean, once again, we don't spend time watching the football game. I think the Super Bowl and all that stuff, the NBA championship and all that other stuff that people would like to watch, is cool. But I would challenge you for 2025, for as many hours as you spend in entertainment, spend an equal amount of time in entertainment. That's INNER-tainment. And that will definitely get us on the path that will allow us to overcome this Maafa that we continue to exist in. And I guess last, I'd like to say, because I could go on and I only had 20 minutes to speak, so I'm going to honor your time. I have more history books in my library at home. And I have hundreds of books that I've all read. I started reading our history in 6th grade. I started off with reading the biography of Dr. George Washington Carver. And that inspired me to learn more about our people. But in my library, I have mainly history books rather than psychology books. I've been in the field of psychology since 1976. So I've studied a lot, and I've studied people, all kinds of people, all over the planet, because I believe that the best way to understand human nature, this human condition, is to understand the history and the mythology. That mythology deals with one's faith-based traditions and all of the stories and fables that goes along with our cultures. If you understand those two things, everything else becomes a lot easier to understand, and you understand yourself a lot better when you understand the history and the mythology. Not one or the other, but actually both. It gives you a more complete picture about why we think the way that we do. And of all of my studies, I realized one thing. If I had to summarize one thing out of all of the books I've read and all of the studies I've done for almost 50 years, is that when we look at the destroyer, everything they cannot control, they seek to destroy. Everything. Everything. It doesn't matter how nice the food tastes in France, what type of nice architecture that they copied from the ancient Kemites in Greece, those pillar temples, direct copies of what we had already built in Kemet, or what they call Egypt, for thousands of years. They copy it and tell us they created all those things. They just copied. They haven't created anything except destruction. Medicine, they stole the papyruses, the medical papyruses out of ancient Kemet. The library at Waset, or Luxor, they call it today. They pillaged the library in Luxor, took the books back. Alexander the thief, they called him Alexander the Great. They pillaged the libraries, took all that all they could not steal, they destroyed. They did the same thing in Central America and South America and every place they go. So we have to understand what we're dealing with. So when we seek to emulate people who are destructive, we become destructive. We do things to destroy ourselves. We take drugs. We become violent, not against the destroyers, but against each other. So we can flip the script if we want to. Because once again, as a people, we have the history of beating the odds against the odds when we have the will to do so. What's going to increase our will to do so? That's our challenge for 2025 and beyond. But we have to be well-grounded. We have to understand who we are. Because we're more powerful than we realize. Far more powerful than we know. And the destroyer fears the day that we realize how powerful we are. Ashe.
I heard everything he was talking about. And when it comes to unlock, I used to always walk around and try to figure out who it was, man. What is this feeling? What is it? What is it? My mind? Who is this talking to me? It's a lot of times I used to get so drunk, and I used to hear that voice. This voice y'all hear? He used to call me out. Sam, wake up. Because guess what? That voice is just the power to you. Once you unlock it, you can control everything. I'm a crane instructor. My boss told me, he said, hey, what is it that you have that I don't? I'm like, man, what is it? I started writing a book. So you guys have probably heard about it. My name is Tutmose. I was actually led here because something happened to me. And when it happened to me, I actually went to the radio. And when I heard it, it led me here. My wife was right there. I told her straight up, I didn't love anybody. And I'm actually here because I'm supposed to tell everybody this. God is love. And when you get that love in your heart, you just got to give it to everybody. And when you unlock it, that's the power. You just got to make people believe. And when they believe, that's the power that you gave to somebody. It's not money. My job offered me $10,000. Stay. I make almost $100,000 a year. But money is nothing. Because guess what? We don't have that. I had tough love my whole life. Tough love. That's not love. That's not the power. I told my wife, I didn't love you. I didn't love my daughters. I never loved nobody. So when it came to that, she gave me empathy. That's what you got to have. When you get that empathy, you have to give it to everybody and you unlock it. That's the power. Love. That's what he's talking about. And I give it to everybody. And now my words just come so easy. Everything I say is truth. And that's a part of everything you got to get. And us, I don't know if it's us. I don't know what it is, but you just got to give it to everybody.
It's not about them, it's about us. So I think certainly the lessons that we learned back in the 60s and 70s is that we know how to change the world. We know how to do that. We know exactly how to do that. We know how to change our existence. And what we learned is that we change it with our interactions with each other. When we change our sphere of influence, our families, when we come together as a community, and we have these courageous conversations, the healing conversations, that help us to understand who we are and our history and what's going on around us, that in itself is one way. And there's many ways of doing that. But that's just one way that worked very well for us in the 60s and 70s. Perhaps we need to return to some of the things that actually worked for us. Now we have social media. We can talk to 1,000 people at one time if we can get them online on time. That's the best ideas. And it doesn't matter if you have a GED or a PhD or no D. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you bring your spirit, you bring who you are, you bring your lived experience to the conversation. And as Professor Karen Hunter would say, everybody bring their brick. Bring your brick. We're building. Whatever your brick look like, bring it so we can build together and without judgment. The one thing that keeps us from coming together is that sometimes we're wanting to avoid judgment. We have to work on being non-critical with each other because we don't come from all the same places. We have different mothers. That by itself says we don't come from the same place. And even twins have their differences. If you know people who are twins, they definitely have conflict. Young ones, Willie Lynch was a plantation owner in the Caribbean. He was notorious for beating and controlling his enslaved Africans. I refuse to call them slaves. They were not slaves, they were people who were enslaved. That's different. And the plantation owners in Virginia wanted to find out how they could control their enslaved Africans better. So long story short, and I'm just abbreviating, but you can look this up. They sent for Willie Lynch to come up from the Caribbean to teach them how to control their enslaved Africans. And what Willie Lynch says, well, the best way to control your enslaved Africans, and he used the word slaves and some other words that started with N's. He said the best way to control them, you find something to divide them on. You pit the young against the old, males against females. Working today? Yeah. And the antidote to being Willie Lynched is unity. Because it was all about keeping us divided. You see, we've made the mistake of allowing our differences to divide us. Then we get the AKs against the Deltas, and the Alphas against the Qs, and the Baptists against the Pentecostals. We find all kinds of things to divide us. And pettiness. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how does this this thing liberate black folk. If it doesn't liberate us, cause us to be freer in our thinking and our beingness, we need to just stop it. Because it doesn't serve us, it serves the purpose of somebody else. So anyway, long answer to a short question. I'm sorry. Yes.
Good morning or afternoon. Thank you for your talk with us today, Dr. Young. My name is Leah, so I have a question. You mentioned Dr. Wilson's quote or state, to manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness, and then I didn't finish writing the rest. But on that, within our homes, so what does that look like, even amongst like youth who are in places like this? Like, what does teaching ourselves kind of look like, and what is the impact of not doing that to, yeah.
Okay, well, the last portion speaks volumes. But first and foremost, let me say that as taxpayers, as people who pay state tax and county tax and city tax and certainly federal tax, we have every right to demand what's on the curriculum. We're paying taxes. We've been paying taxes, particularly with the internet. We can identify all kinds of resources, viable, valid resources on the internet. There are books that we can get, sometimes even free. In fact, in Colorado Springs, in my city, we've been teaching Black history classes, and we also have a drumming circle that occurs right after we do the Black history study group. We have books that we actually give to participants. If they cannot afford the book, we give them the book. So there's no reason. And in fact, I'll go one step further. That in this age of information technology, ignorance is a choice. It really is. And there's a Ghanaian proverb that goes something like this, out of West Africa. Not to know is bad, not to want to know is worse. So what can we do within our community, particularly us elders? I consider myself to be one of those since I'm up in age a bit, but everyone else. What can we do within our communities to encourage our young people to be enthusiastic about who we are, about our culture? Because it's one thing to have a study group and no one shows up. It's something else to have a study group that we ourselves, our tax dollars to serve our purposes. But then again, we have to make sure that we have people who are qualified to teach our history. Otherwise, we have black folks being taught by white folks who don't like black folk and coming up with all kinds of their personal biases being disseminated in the classroom. So we don't want that. But we can be very intentional, and that's my point. We have to be very intentional and very deliberate and very serious about teaching our history to ourselves and sharing that with each other. Ashe? My brother.
Hey, Brother Tutmose, I just want to honor and tell you, first of all, thank you for all your work and your contribution to our community. Yes, definitely want to give that for. I have two questions.
Yes.
One of my good brothers, he asked, have you written books? And if you have, could you give us a name of them? And then I'll ask my second question once you answer that one.
Okay, I have not written any books, but I just retired. If I write any books beyond that, I don't know. It depends upon how much time the Creator leaves me. Ashe?
Ashe.
Second question.
And my next question is, a lot of our people are angry, whether they know it or not. And when it comes to understanding and reading our history, what suggestion would you give people to get over their hump from, of reading information and seeing what's going on with us consistently and being angry and balance ourselves out to get on the other side, to move more empowerment for ourselves and carry to others? Because sometimes people get stuck in an angry and knowing and unknowingly moving in an unbalanced way.
Yes. Wonderful question. Okay. One thing certainly is to be able to heal, because we have been damaged. Once again, the Resilience organization out of the East Coast, they came up with what are known as emotional emancipation circles. And in 2011, the National Association of Black Psychologists got with the Community Healing Network and further enhanced what we call the emotional emancipation circles. These are courageous conversations for people of African descent. This is not an integrated space. White people and Latinos and other people on the planet who have experienced historical trauma has to come up with their own healing program. The emotional emancipation circles was developed for people of African descent. Now, we've made the mistake of trying to heal other people and not addressing our own pain, our own historical and personal healing. So what the emotional emancipation circles do, these are healing spaces where we come together and we actually engage in discussions about something going on right now with Brother Tamani. In other places, we have people who join the emotional emancipation circles, and they're led by facilitators who have been trained on how to conduct them. This is not psychotherapy, but it's a healing space. Anything that helps is therapeutic, right? Anything that helps is therapeutic. It's not therapy, it's something that helps. So that's the beginning. And that's not a panacea, it's just simply a portal that we can enter to begin that process of addressing our historical and personal trauma and some of the craziness that's going on now. And just to add to that, just one bit, is that since this last election, where King Chaos was elected, I call him King Chaos because he creates chaos whenever he opens his mouth. The risk is that we can get so caught up, we can bind all of our energy and wrap it all up into addressing all that foolishness. It can be all consuming. And if we do that, we won't have time to us, not just today, but in the future. So we just have to be mindful. I'm not saying ignore the foolishness. We have to address it somehow, of course, but don't spend most of our time there. We have to spend most of our time with us and doing what's going to be adding to our wellness and our sanity and our health as a people. And that's our challenge. And because the destroyer are masters at mass distraction as well as mass destruction. And when we know that, we can avoid the trap, because that's a trap. Ashe? Okay.
Like Winnie Mandela, it ain't gonna happen. So,
Okay.
where in society has that
Okay.
taken place without?
Well, going to your first question, I'm not sure where it has ever happened without having people in all spaces come together and address the issues, because we have to avoid the trap of dichotomous thinking. To Europeans, white folks, the destroyer love to get caught up in dichotomous thinking. It's like either or. See, black folks have never thought like that. We've been conditioned to think like that, but it's never been either or. As a people, we're holistic thinking. The leadership, whatever that is, we made the mistake back some years ago, some decades ago, having people step up as being leaders. They're easily assassinated. They're easily murdered. All of us are leaders. We have to figure out what space we're in and use that space to create that synergy that allows us to come together in the same direction. Because we have all kinds of persuasions. We're Democrats, Republicans, GDI, that means goddamn independents. Then we have everybody else in between. We have all kinds of ways of looking at this reality. So we have to be willing to, once again, not allow our differences to divide us and come together and have some planning, some strategy. First step, because that the universe began in the thought of the Creator. I don't care what you call the Creator. It all began with the thought. If you look at all of our histories in our culture, this reality started in the mind as a thought in the Creator. Then came the Word. Then came the manifestation in the physical realm. So all that is something that we have to contend with. Some of our other ancestors who said, by any means necessary, we take nothing off the table. If it takes violence, it takes violence. If it takes negotiation and talking, that's good too. We have to figure out what works in what particular space.
But
So,
in history, where has
I don't know. I've not seen it.
To get our
I've not seen
on
it.
the same accord.
I have not seen it. Maybe it has, but I've not read about it. Okay? So I agree with you. Yes, brother.
I just feel like we're doing it.
Yes.
We're doing it.
Yes.
We're doing it.
Wait.
Right now.
This, no.
There's no vibe. You gotta get the people of what you know. And when it comes to those people you're talking about, you have to get the people that understand you. The other people, they just lost right now. But that's okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, once again, the idea is that there's not one way to addressing our issues. We have lots of different ways, and we have to be willing to not think outside. That's that box. And any possible solution they can ever come up with to solving the problem will always serve you. Because you're using their language, their religion, their principles, interests, values, etc., to solve a problem they created that you're trying to get out of. So not only do we have to think outside of the box, we have to throw the damn box away. Create our own paradigm. And we got the genius to do it because we're the oldest people on the planet.
That's right.
So we need to do. But first we begin with the thought, then the discussion, and then the action. So that's up to all of the genius within all of us. No one of us have the answer, but together, collectively, we do.
That's right.
I should. Okay.
Thank you.
Time's up.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick intermission to give TSU, I apologize, Prairie View a chance to set up, but I want to say really quickly, I want to thank a few people. My bad. I'm sorry. So, all right, I said, what's the opening prayer? Thank you for not standing up. All right, and I believe in what Dr. Tutmose just said. It's going to take a group, a cadre of us thinking outside of the box. Damn the box. It might not be a box. It might be a triangle. Doing our own thing. I have people that I can reach out to ask for assistance when I need assistance, and I need that a lot because I cannot do this by myself. I reached out to my brother, and I want y'all to stand up when y'all clap for this because this is a big deal. Everybody. I reached out to my brother Jeff Drummer, told him I needed him to go pick up these kids from Prairie View A&M University, and he did it. So all y'all stand up. And give a round of applause for our brother, because it's good when you got people you can reach out to that answer the call. He's using his van that is not new to pick up these children, and he did it. And he got to take them back. And this is going to be here as well. And we want to go down the list really quickly. Always want to thank the Creator and the ancestors, because were it not for them, again, we wouldn't be here. These are people who have helped me throughout since I said I wanted to do this thing. They've been there for me from the beginning. Dr. Delilah Brown, Reverend Naila Nelson, Sister Aseta Tep, Sister Amanda Kemp, Sister Candace Owens, Sister Ekundayo Ochi Nkulu Leko. Did I get it? All right, Sister Ochi, all right. My wonderful wife, Sister Oni, Brother Craig, Brother Natambu, Dr. Tutmose, and Reverend Aswad, if I didn't already say that. Our VIP, Sister Alexis Price, Sister Ochi, Sister Leah, Brother William couldn't be here, and Dr. Terrell had a family emergency. Our marketing volunteers, I emailed everybody that looks like us. I emailed a bunch of people. From professors to high school teachers to high school clubs to on-campus organizations. I emailed, and again, Brother Natambu, that's a big deal. And then we had a youth support team that was reaching out to try to get the youth here, because there are a lot of things that we're going to be doing with our youth moving forward. Because if we're not preparing to pass the baton to someone, all this is for naught. Hopefully, these young kids in the back will accept that baton and run like hell, because again, we're up against it. And that's Sister Jasmine Ayers, Sister Jess Bogany, Sister Melissa Daniels, Sister Nkala Asante, Byron Parker, Charles Gooden, Preston Dillard, Raphael Coyer, Ronald Westby, Stephen Brown, and Brother Fain.